this computer, and we should, we're now recording, and back to here. Okay, so we'll try to get through this quickly, and thanks for joining. It's obviously difficult times, and it's important we get this information across and understood. This is what we're going to do. I'll do some brief introductions for the OHUA folks, well, introduction to the OHUA folks, so everyone knows who they are. And then I'll briefly go over some of the roles we're talking about, because that may not be clear to everyone. Then Hattie will jump in and give us an update on the current COVID-19 restrictions and what that means. And then the main meat of the meeting will be Ray going over the coaching and development opportunities that OHUA can provide. So firstly, who are we? Well, hopefully you know me. I'm here tonight as in twin roles as the OHC umpire developer. And from OHUA, I am the liaison for OHC. I'll explain what that means in a sec. Hattie is here as the OHUA COVID-19 officer, and we'll be telling you about that stuff. And then Ray Hipkin is the chief umpire coach. And we've also got on the line Mark Cumming, who also does quite a bit of umpire coaching and wants to sit in and join in the fun. So that's who we are. Very briefly, I think I need to explain a bit what this OHUA liaison and the club umpire developer roles are. I think Ray will probably go over the responsibilities of the developer a bit when he talks, but basically we've got you attending this meeting are the club umpires, and somehow we need to help you. And so how do we do this? Well, each club has appoints a club umpire developer. This is an England hockey defined role, and there's information on their website about what that role does. But that person is largely there to support the umpires and try to work out what they need in the way of support and training and things like that. That person will interact with someone from the OHUA committee who is the liaison for that club. And for instance, I'm the liaison not only for OHC, but also for Bicester. And in that role, I liaise with Gary Brock at Bicester, who is Bicester's club umpire developer. But in our case, and in many cases, about half the clubs, those roles are performed by the same person, because there is someone on the OHUA committee from that club. And so in our case, I am performing the role of the liaison and the developer. They are really distinct roles, but they can be performed by the same person. And it obviously avoids having to pick up the phone and talk to someone else, because you can wear both hats at the same time. So that's basically what the liaison and the developer are. What they're supposed to do, I'm sure Ray will go over this a bit more, but we wrote a job description for what those two roles should be trying to achieve. I'm not going to read through this line by line. It's there for you to read if you want. But it's broadly to improve the umpiring standards, broaden the knowledge of umpiring amongst the players of the club, and to improve the interactions between the club and OHUA. So that's basically what I am trying to do in that joint role of the liaison and umpire developer. So I think that, that's it from me. Are there any questions about that? Could I ask you to unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions, but then mute yourself if you're not talking, just so we don't have too much noise. So if there are any questions on that particular aspect of things, then ask them now. Otherwise, we'll move on and let Hattie talk. Okay. Hattie, do you want to share your screen? Or do you
No.
want to talk?
I was just going to talk. There wasn't
Okay.
anything specific. Sorry, I have no PowerPoint presentation. But hi everyone. I'm Hattie, obviously, and I've taken on the task of the COVID officer for OHUA, which is not as onerous as being COVID officer for a club, I have to say. However, all I say to you as umpires is the best thing for you to do is to read the EH guidance for umpires, which is pretty thorough and pretty obvious, actually. A lot of it is common sense, which is on their website under the officiating tab. And also to read the EH guidelines for return to hockey step 4 and 5. I don't know your backgrounds. I assume a lot of you are players as well. And therefore you must have signed a participation agreement to get back onto the pitch. And also if you just umpire, you're a club umpire, you needed to sign a participation agreement ticking Oxford and OHUA, perhaps, if you are level 1 assessed and taking appointments on that participation agreement, which is should have been guided to you by your club. The guidance is just that, is guidance which you must adhere to, but the onus on the guidance from an umpire's point of view is coming from the club. So it's the club's responsibility to make sure that their ground is risk assessed and has all the appropriate protocols and guidance in to allow step 4 and 5 hockey matches to return. And the majority of these are things like signage, so it's telling you the obvious ways to go in and out. They should have staggered all their start times and finish times, lengthen it out so people aren't all congregating as they get in and out. There should be hand sanitisation points everywhere, and usually you should be aware of these either via your role as an umpire or as a and it's, even though it's not really, there's no restrictions to stuff, it's more guidance of how you can facilitate a safe game within this COVID environment. And that's about it, really, that all I have to say. The majority of stuff is on the EH website and they put it very well. But do you guys have any questions for me? Oh, sorry, one more thing. My role is to take feedback from umpires, OHUA umpires who go around and do appointed games. And if they're worried about a certain ground or a certain club not taking it seriously, or there are any issues, or they need to ask something else, then they come to me. And my address is on the OHU website. It's just COVID-19 at, I can't remember what it is, but it all comes through to my own address. So but it's up on the website. And I will do my very best to try and sort out any issues. I'm anticipating more problems from when umpires visit grounds that the EH guidance is not in place. That's how I would look at it. And my email address is covid-19 at Oxfordshire, hua.org. There you go. Anyway, any questions from you guys? Gail.
Sorry, I don't think there's a hands up thing on this Zoom.
No.
Yeah. So my concern is more about misinformation. So just from my experience last Saturday, I was approached by someone, a very cautious person, should I say, and who was umpiring, and wanted all the subs to wear masks on the sideline, and then said that because we'd gone with a full squad, so that was 16, and then there was me, that was 17, that 2 of our party had to stand outside the pitch because they were only allowed to have 15 people, you know, like 30 people on the ground. So it was all right when I said, you know, that I'm sure that wasn't the case, and actually had fortunately printed out some of the EH guidance with me, but it's actually he was so nervous, this guy who was umping from the other side, that I think, you know, that's one of the problems that we have to challenge, that some people seem absolutely scared stiff, rather than not. You know, I think we're worried about people not taking enough precautions, but then we're also encountering the opposite extreme.
Yes, well, he has got a point about there being a maximum of 30 people in the pitch, in the area.
But no one else has done that. So as long as everyone was a metre apart, which wasn't, you know, we weren't contesting that, but then to say that you could only have 30 people actually within the, you know, within the fenced area.
I think the guidelines state that it's 30 people on the pitch at any one time. So that means, so therefore at a match, I would imagine that if you've got your subs and coaches, as long as they're spaced apart on the side, you don't.
No, he was counting everybody. He was counting absolutely. So we had spectators outside, you know, behind the fence, but he was counting everyone who was inside the fenced area. So, in fact, fortunately, one of the other members of their team came along and said, well, as long as we were all a metre apart, she wasn't bothered if two of our subs stayed on the pitch side.
Okay, well, I think he was actually wrong in the guidance. Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't
say but that's what I'm thinking. I'm just dealing with, because it obviously didn't get the it all worked out all right in the end, but I was just struck by how nervous he was.
Yeah, and that is, you will encounter that as an umpire, that some people are very nervous about the whole thing, but you will probably find the majority of them are anything but. And the majority of the issues that you will have as an umpire is trying to make sure that the social distancing guidelines are actually in force and are being done and on the side of the pitch. And you are allowed 16 players in your squad and a coach. So he was actually not correct by saying that there had to be a certain amount.
No, I pointed that out to him, but he was saying, even though I said, oh, that was right. You know, we didn't have a computer with us on the sideline. I unfortunately had a printout with me, but he was otherwise going to say, obviously hadn't seen all of the details.
Well, he's obviously very cautious, and don't know who it is. But, you know, he might not want to attend hockey matches if he's feeling this nervous about it.
Well, that was my reaction, but I couldn't really say that.
I probably would have done. So. But as long as the subs are socially distanced as well, you don't have to wear masks. But I've umpired a match where the coach has, just the coach. But I think it's because he's shouting.
We're outside.
Yeah. Sorry?
I mean, we were outside.
I know. It's just, you're going to come across some individuals who are very wary of the whole situation. But believe you me, Gail, you're probably going to find exactly the opposite the further you travel round. And
don't worry, I work in London and in a hospital.
Yeah.
So
oh well. God, I hope you didn't tell him that. He probably would have put a hazmat suit.
Yes.
You know, so the other thing I did forget to mention right at the beginning, which was top of my list before we all started and I forgot it, was that the one new rule is that if anybody is caught spitting, or this is such a bad trait, clearing their nose on the pitch, like a la football style, where they snot through it onto the pitch, that is a straight green card. And then obviously you escalate it if they do it again to the appropriate cards as you go through your game. I have issued quite a few greens, sadly to men only. I've yet to see the ladies do this. I don't know anybody else's experience, but that is mandatory green. And that's anywhere on the pitch. So that's even if a sub does it. Yeah.
Hattie, there's also a requirement there, I believe, that the pitch has to be disinfected by the
yeah.
And that requires the club to have disinfecting materials available, which may or may not be the case.
Well, they should do.
It should be.
Part of the
just got a question there about the Brooks pitch. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, it's the same as like having a blood injury on the pitch. It needs to be cleared up immediately. So they should have the kit there. Yeah, sorry, Sean.
That's okay. Just obviously with Tim, with knowledge of the Oxford Brooks home pitch and possibly the academy, Is it knowledgeable that we've got those facilities at the pitch side?
I don't know, but I live with someone who will know the answer to that.
Yeah. Okay.
They each
I'll just pop.
individual. So from an OHU point of view, every club that we appoint umpires to have had to submit a risk assessment to us for the ground that they play at, which means that we have seen that they've got all the sanitation points, signage, and they have following the guidelines from EH to return to play to hockey. If they don't produce a risk assessment, and I can't think off the top, I don't think anyone has, but if they don't, then we don't appoint umpires. So if you are an appointed umpire, you are safe in the knowledge that the pitch you're going to, we've received the risk assessment, we've even looked through it, and we have made sure that we're happy to appoint to this pitch.
Yeah, of course. No, I understand. I think Brooks has got quite a few of the capabilities. With recent coaching I've done, I don't think Oxford Academy has something like that available on the sideline, so possibly something for us to consider as umpires.
Yeah. What Helen's just told me is that all captains and all coaches should have disinfecting materials with them for OHC matches. What other clubs might do different things.
No, that's fair enough. I'll follow up with the junior section because it was on behalf of my junior team, and I think quite a few of the fixtures will be there due to Headington not being available as such. So I'll follow up with that with someone from the junior side.
Okay. Any other questions?
The one other thing that I've come across in umpiring is that people do pick up the ball sometimes. It's just instinct. It's in a net or something, and they reach down and pick it up, which obviously we're not supposed to do now. We did discuss this at the AGM, and I think we came to the conclusion that what the right approach was just to have a quiet word with the player and just remind them they're not supposed to do it. We don't think that's a sort of a punishable offence. If it's just instinct.
I mean, unless they're using it as an excuse. We have had an example, didn't we, of a bit higher up that people were alleged that they needed to disinfect the ball every time they touched it with their hands, which is not correct at all. They touched it with their hands, that's their lookout, and they just got to remember to disinfect their hands after the game, which actually, if you've got the sanitation point, the hand sanitizer, then that's not an issue. So as an umpire, you can give them a friendly advice. I do at the beginning and just say, just remember, guys, try not to pick the ball up with your hands, use your stick or your foot, obviously not in play, and all the rest of it. But if someone is picking the ball up and making a bit of a show of it, you can think, are they doing it deliberately for time wasting? And then obviously appropriate management of that. Not seen that. And if people, I've said to somebody in particular, some guy who kept picking the ball up, I did say to him, look, you do realise what you're doing, don't you? Because it's instinctive. And as an umpire, you need to remind them to be socially distant when play has stopped as well. And there was an incident where there were some spectators inside in the pitch, and it's actually the home team's responsibility to make sure that those spectators are not within the I call it the wire, not within the pitch. Yeah, it's not actually your responsibility as an umpire, but I again have been politely saying to people, you need to be the other side of the fence, would you mind moving? Just because I was there, it was my side, it was easy to do, but it's not our responsibility per se to be doing this. But it's just, to me, it's common sense. It's all about being socially distant, being aware, and huddles as well at the top of the D. That's another one. Try and make sure, and when the first short happens, when I award my first short, I'm like, guys, can you remember not to huddle at the top of the D? Yeah, try and keep it as distant as possible. But
on what you said there, Hattie, with them needing disinfectant, you said they touched it when they leave. So is there meant to be a disinfectant station as you leave the pitch as well as when you come in?
Yes, at the entry and the exit points. That is what is recommended in the guidelines. Okay,
no problem. Thank you.
Or if there isn't, just go and wash your hands as soon as possible. Just don't touch your face. So. Anything else?
I think one thing, Hattie, that did come up on a call that I did with another club earlier on in the week is the next game waiting to come on. And it's making sure that actually they do not try and muscle into the compound itself, but they stay well away until such time as they can then take control of the pitch area or take control inside the fence. That they need to stay outside the fence until it is their time.
Yeah,
they're not coming onto the compound, starting to warm up on the side of the pitch and doing what they normally do. They do all that outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And most clubs, everywhere I've been, they got very specific exit and entry points. And certainly it's always been well marshalled. I've never had an incident of a team coming on before the other ones left. And all the start times have been extended. And the league's given permission, haven't they, for that, so that they can start a bit earlier and finish a bit later. So it should, in theory, be well ordered. But if not, then as an umpire, you could perhaps ask them just to stay out and wait till everyone is out. You know, and as umpires, we need to make sure we socially distance too from the players when we're doing the pre-match talk to them, and then with our colleague at half time and things like that. Sometimes it's just very easy to forget these things, you know, and you do need to make sure that obviously you're leading by example by keeping socially distant at half time and everything like that. So it's easy to forget. Oh, and another top tip: don't share your headpieces. Yeah, because it's not so much the ear, it's the microphone. And if you did, you need to disinfect it and leave it for 72 hours before it's used again. That's with club kit. Anyway.
Okay, any other questions on COVID, or shall we move on? No, okay. So Hattie may leave now.
Yes, sorry, I need to go and get supper. Thank you, guys. Any issues, just do give me an email. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Hattie.
Okay, bye. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay, Ray, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed. What I've been asked to do tonight is just to outline to you what the approach is going to be moving forward. Some of you may not know that I took over the role that I'm fulfilling now right at the start of lockdown. So actually lockdown gave us a tremendous opportunity, and Mark has worked closely with me as well, on getting a new, fresher structure behind umpire coaching, and also trying to make sure we have got the umpire developer firmly in the loop in terms of managing the coaching process. Tim, can I share my screen, please? Tell me when I can. Okay, can you all see that? If somebody could just give me a nod or whatever to say that's there, fine, thank you. This is the new umpire structure that we've now developed. And the whole idea is to give umpire developers, to give the umpire, and to give the coaches, the county coaches, a structure to which we're working in and around. Now, these have been sent out, okay? These have been sent out to the umpire developers. They've been sent out to the coaches. And you'll see that the club umpired, as the new umpire identifies they'd like to start to umpire, you'll see that there are recommended steps. These are not compulsory, but they're recommended steps for the umpire to take and for the umpire developer to lead the umpires through. Now, having followed that through, part of my role is to work with the developer to make sure that when the umpire is ready and the necessary steps are about to take place, we can actually then take those steps. We can get assessment in place, and if necessary, we can get coaching in place for the we can get coaching in place for the umpire to follow through. Tim, could you bear with me just for 5 minutes? There appears to be an alarm going off in my house at the moment. So could you just bear with me just for 2 minutes?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, shit happens, doesn't it?
But may I just ask, you know, we used to get a rule book at the beginning of the season. Are those still being produced? And
no, the paper versions are not being printed anymore, but what there is there's a app for Android and iOS. So you can just download that onto your phone, which is actually probably an easier way of handling it.
Yeah, is that on the, where's that, on the website? Is it?
No, just go.
Gail, if you go, sorry Tim, Gail, if you go to the FIH.ch website, it's in the officiating bit, and as Tim says, there is an app which you can download from the Apple Store or Google Play, whatever it is, but you can also download a PDF file from the FIH website.
Okay, that's useful to know.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, apologies.
Burning down.
I do apologise. Unfortunately, one of the log burners decided to blow back and it set the smoke alarm off. Right. So, umpire identifies that they'd like to be considered for umpiring. They're interested in taking the steps into umpiring. When they're moving through the club structure, the club umpire developer very much encourages the umpires to use the facilities that are on the England hockey website. So you've got all sorts of training and backups, video clips. There are training packages for key parts of umpiring, and these are being developed all the time. And I would encourage all umpires to keep themselves refreshed, keep the knowledge fresh by having a go at those particular sections. Now, if an umpire is not a member of a club, they will be pointed into my direction, where I will be recommending to them that they either join a club, or we're then able to pick them up and move them through exactly the same structure. As you can see, we take them, there are 3 stages. You've got from club umpire nominated through to club umpire assessed. The next stage from then on in is to move into county umpire status. This is where you are taking appointments, and at that stage there is not another assessment as such, but we will mark, one of us will be visiting to grade the umpire to make sure that their umpiring is at a standard where it is resilient enough to umpire the next level above. Exactly the same thing happens through the county umpire appointment grades before somebody is then put forward for a level 2. But we need to make sure that before we put forward people for level 2, that they're able to meet the commitment of being a level 2 umpire, which includes all the travel requirements, which includes the match management processes, because of the steps involved. The whole idea of this process is to make sure that umpires are not put into games where their umpiring is not resilient to do so. and it's not a one-off assessment. Mark will do a visit and will then feed back to the committee where he sees an umpire in the grading system. I may then visit an umpire and I may confirm, I may disagree with Mark, and if necessary, it will then go to a third person. But it's not just one assessment that an umpire will have, particularly nearer to the county umpire appointment level that you get. And then certainly when you are then taking the step through to level 2, we will have the regional team step in, and they will then start to also be involved in that coaching, but also in the grading of the umpire. So what I will show you now is a feedback form that Mark and I have devised, which you as if we visit you, and we're encouraging umpire developers also to use these forms, because it means that we're building up a knowledge of the movement and the skills of that umpire. We've set certain scores against certain levels of umpiring. So it starts off for the club umpire unassessed. The first question being, are they scoring consistently in order to be ready to be put forward to assessment? There is no point in an umpire stepping forward for assessment if they're simply not ready. One of us will then step forward to assess, and you can see that there are, particularly on page 2, some boxes which are in what we call a compulsory red phase, and there you must be consistently scoring 2 and above in those boxes with regard to safe environment, timely decisions, accurate decisions, and also recognizing danger at the early point and stepping in before it develops to be dangerous. And those are compulsory boxes where we certainly would be looking for. The higher you get, the orange boxes may then start to come into play, and we start looking at more the game management aspect. We're looking at how the umpire conducts themselves, and also how they how they manage the players, particularly when the game is starting to get that little bit fractious as to whether the umpire is able to manage that situation and deal with the situation correctly. Okay, now that is more or less, in a nutshell, the actual development. Now, sitting behind all of this, Mark and I have a spreadsheet where we track umpires that umpire developers have put forward to us. So let's say Tim says that Fred Smith, who's one of our club umpires, we think is coming up and will soon be ready for assessment. They fit onto our radar. We then take them through that radar, and again, a little bit later on, if the umpire and Tim feel that yes, they would like to be considered for the county level, in other words, they're ready to start taking the appointments and they feel ready to do so, again, Tim will be flagging that through. And the reason why this step is vital is because as a county coach, I cannot possibly conceivably monitor every umpire that is in the county. I could just simply cannot do it. And that is where we were. The other aspect that we've also introduced is that we need to have timely, or we need to have sufficient time in order to get the right coach or the right assessor to look at an umpire and to carry out that function. Now that can't be done, as was often the case, and I've been coaching umpiring within Oxfordshire and within Souths now for nearly 10 years, and the number of phone calls that I'll get on the Thursday night. Can you come and assess me on Saturday? But the answer is no, because we have other appointments, we have other commitments. And yes, surprise, surprise, we also have some family commitments which sometimes do need to take precedence. So I need to know that three things. Firstly, that we've got the proper match set up, but also that I have sufficient time with that umpire to be able to carry out the function. So I need time before the game to talk to the umpire. Now we're using three-way radio, so I can listen in to the umpires and hear the rude things they're saying about the players, or the rude things they're saying about me, possibly. I don't know. But what I can also do is offer at the time constructive help if I think it is necessary. After the game, and this is now a new great step that we've taken, I will need time after the game, particularly if it's an assessment, because you can't leave an umpire dangling for the whole weekend to know whether or not they've achieved the level 1 or not. So I need time with the umpire afterwards, but also to sort radios out and things like that. But what I now have, and the county have allowed the investment, I now have a Zoom account where I will be asking the umpires to be free either on the Monday or the Tuesday if they can, let's say 8 o'clock in the evening, and we can have quality discussion. And I can also use some of the coaching video clips that we have in our arsenal to make points to the umpire, rather than just standing on the side of the pitch in a huddle in the pouring rain, trying to give quality feedback. So the whole idea is to try and make not just the coaching experience an enjoyable one, but also a quality one. Because I firmly believe that the time we spend needs to be quality time, simply because we can't come to Oxford every week. We have to, we have to, and we are quite a small, thin team. Well, perhaps in my case, not so much thin, but we are a small team, and we need to make sure we've got the right resource in the right place to carry out the function. Okay, Tim, over to you. I'm ready for any questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yep,
okay.
All right, Marianne.
Well, it's just I'm well aware that I think most of you, it seems to be it's more to do with the ladies. You're all more involved in the ladies' side of the hockey. Am I correct?
No, I will.
Oh, right.
I will coach men's umpires. I will coach ladies umpires. The reason why Oxfordshire tends to be concentrating more on the ladies is because Oxfordshire appoints to the ladies. Bucks control and deal mostly with the men's aspect. But with most of my coaching duties, I'm sort of firmly split throughout the season. But what we have to make sure is that if Marianne says to me, look, you know, can I do some coaching? I do need to know whether we are looking at grading for the men's game or the ladies' game, because in some cases there can be a different expectation, can't there?
Yeah, it was just that by the end of the process, what they've got a lot of the ones that have been bringing through the men's section, they help out with the ladies, but a good percentage of them want to go on to do men's. So if they're going through, they get through onto, say, level 2 or the coaching, and are assessed by those people. Does that get fed into whoever appoints umpire?
That's where Tim will come in. The first thing that I would encourage the club to do is to give through some of the appointments, and also let's also remember that we've got a very valuable opportunity for umpires to practice, but also signal and we can gauge some of the environment is when you're actually got practice matches going on within the club. That's a really valuable time for umpires to get practice. And sometimes we can, before we get into the league, if we are coaching or we are assessing an umpire and we are taking an umpire into a league that the league rules would exclude them from, we can, as a county, request that step, and I have an assessment in 3 weeks' time where we have taken that step. The league are happy to do it as long as it is a controlled process. It's not a way of getting an umpire in to umpire a game who isn't ready. There's got to be a reason why we're actually elevating the umpire to that particular game.
So I think it is very important we handle the men's games as well, because it's those games that typically need the more experienced umpires. Yeah, ladies matches absolutely controversial. The men's matches
I would say that, but one thing I would say, and I'm often saying to the clubs, is that one of the aspects that the men's game can do to assist itself is actually, in some cases, with some clubs, be a bit more encouraging to the umpires rather than discouraging with the way in which they deal with the umpires. You know, there's a job of work to be done there as well. And perhaps where umpires are wanting to elevate and wanting to step into more of the men's games, perhaps that's where the practice games, Tim, can come in. Before we get into the league and before we're exposing the umpire properly, we can give them the flavour.
Is that okay, Marianne?
Yeah, no, it still hasn't answered everything, but that I'll just sort of mull things over and work on it. It's just that I spoke with somebody I was umpiring with on Saturday, because I'm trying to encourage some of the ladies to come and do the men's section, because as you know, the men heavily support, and in fact I think there's an awful lot of men doing the umpiring. There are very few ladies now coming through. It's predominantly men that are doing it. And I've tried to sort of suggest that actually doing some men's games will actually help them in their ladies' matches as well. It's just sort of work in progress.
If it's okay, I've just got a quick question as well myself.
Yeah, carry on.
Just based on the idea of once we've done the like the classroom training with like people like yourself, Ray, is there a time frame in which we need to adhere to before we go to get an assessment, or is it more based on when the club and we feel ready to do so?
It's more based towards when you feel ready. However, there are people coming forward now for assessment that I know did, for instance, the classroom session 3 years ago. Well, in that 3 years, there has been rule changes. So one of the things I need to make sure is that people have got an up-to-date rules test rather than a rules test which they did 4 years ago before they came to the classroom session. So
yeah, of course.
There are steps. Yeah. There are steps that need to be sure, because it will come through in their umpiring if they are out of date.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and we are aware that we've got a backlog of people who need to be assessed because of the cancellations that happened earlier in the year, and we're working on that. And it's a difficult thing to organise, because you need to find the right standard of match for the umpire to be involved with, for a sensible assessment to happen. And we typically don't know what matches there are to be umpired until certainly within 2 weeks, sometimes only 1 week out, which is really too late to then get an OHUA assessor alongside to actually do the assessment. So there is a problem there. I
think one of the things that is worth putting in now, the other process I have got running in the background, is that I've been talking to Bucks and I've been talking to Berkshire, and we're very much, you know, we're quite prepared to help each other out. So if a candidate is umpiring in Bucks and one of their coaches or assessors happens to be visiting that game, then I'm very happy for that coach or that assessor to actually give me an indication and to make that decision. It's not just an Oxfordshire coach or assessor turning up to look at an Oxfordshire person. We are working, and one of the things that Mark and I are working towards with England Hockey, we're sitting on a discussion group, which is looking at the integration for the new region. And part of this process and part of this, the background to some of this documentation and processes we've introduced is trying to ease that movement into the new setup so that there's not a great upheaval. And it should, I think, Mark, you'll probably agree, a thumbs up or thumbs down, that actually it's looking really good, isn't it? That it is going to fit in well.
One little point from myself, being an active player, but also an umpire, everything in the umpiring seems to be geared towards, you've either got to, if you want to start going up, you have to either umpire or you can play. Is anything going to start developing that thing? Because we lose a lot of very good umpires, and in fact, they still want to play hockey.
Well, that may be the case, but the higher you get within the leagues, the more commitment that there has to be to the umpire, not necessarily to let's take on match day. You obviously have got to travel to the game that you're appointed to. You're not going to be appointed to your local club all the time. In fact, yeah, you won't get appointed, so therefore the player won't be available then. But we would look, for instance, if you were taking county appointments, to you taking certainly two county appointments a month, and because at the end of the day, it's that practice and it's that exposure that actually helps you cement your status and your level throughout. Because the higher you get to, for instance, if you go to level 2 and move into the regional leagues, you're traveling a lot further, and the expectancy is actually 3 weeks in a month because of the commitment. And also, and there umpires are probably coached or they're assessed probably each 3 times a season.
Yeah, I understand that.
And actually,
I was just saying if there's something we could put forward, or something you guys can put forward if you're starting to really develop things, in the fact of there would be more quality umpires then available for regional, for things. If you start to look at this from a point of view of if districts, when you're getting appointed, if you're appointed within a 30-mile radius, then you'd be able to do both. Personally, I think you're hurting yourselves. Because when I went and they put me for some appointments, they were giving my appointments so far away that it was one or the other. And in the end, you know, while I'm still playing and able to play, that's going to win out. And I think that's unfortunate for both the umpiring association and the clubs.
But the problem the appointment guys have is they have to appoint people that are truly neutral to those clubs. So therefore, you know, there's a balancing act here. But yeah, we've also found that if an umpire is not necessarily able to make the commitment the higher you get, actually their umpiring and their flexibility and their actual delivery of the game suffers quite a lot if they then start to be available less because the match practice isn't there and the match exposure isn't there. So there is a balance, and it's not an easy one. How, you know, looking forward to the future, I don't know quite how the appointment process is going to be. We're going to be teamed up with Bucks, Oxfordshire and Hampshire, and the furthest club away, for instance, is Bournemouth. So, you know, that will be down to the appointment policy for that region, and that actually is going to be influenced not necessarily by the umpires, not by the umpire appointments. That actually will be governed by the regional committee, from what I can gather, which will be predominantly the clubs. So this is all yet to come together, and that's what we're trying to work out in the structure now, just how that actually is going to work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
In terms of supply and demand then, because that will sort of drive your ability to implement those sorts of strategies, have you got plenty of people then? Because otherwise you are going to have to be a bit more flexible and accommodating.
No, we haven't. Well, we've got numbers. What we haven't got are umpires necessarily stepping forward to step into the necessarily the higher leagues. Oxfordshire actually are not so badly off as I would say one or two other counties are. There's a couple of counties that are really struggling, and some of the umpires are umpiring too. And last weekend, I gather one umpire umpired 3 games. Well, that's not healthy.
No, well, I mean, and then we all know in the workplace people have to work with what you have. You can't
absolutely
just implement these policies if you can't get the work in.
Bleach, can I just come back to your point? And it's a really good point. We are very conscious of the fact that the vast majority of our umpires will be players at one point or other in their career, and there's also an acceptance at a sort of an England hockey level about, so how do we encourage players to be able to do both streams, so play and umpire? And Ray's quite rightly made some very valid points about how umpires improve and its practice and so forth. But I specifically look after young umpires in Oxfordshire, and that's one of my really big issues. Is most of the young umpires are players, and they're just doing umpiring sometimes just because it's part of their course at GCSE, but it's a sort of a side show for them. But we've got 4 really good junior young umpires, one of which got his level 2 this season, just gone, and we've got another 2 that hopefully will get through the level 2 process in the not too distant future. But they're players and umpires, and we have to be flexible with them and try, and as Gail says, try and compromise and try and get something that fits, because ultimately, from a club perspective, you need umpires to service the game, and we're trying to do what we can to encourage that stream, whilst accepting and recognising that a lot of people will still want to play.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. No, it's just because Bridget sort of said that I should go forward for my level 2, and but she was like, "Are you ready to stop playing?" And I'm like, "Well, no, not quite yet. Probably soon. My injuries are coming on a bit more, but it's just I have sort of spoken to the Bucks guy. I do the men's side, and
right.
Just to try. But for me to know when my game is, and then to know when I can, so there's game, I could do an umpiring for anything, but I have to balance it with the game, and it's just trying to find out. But you saying that there is some flexibility will enable that, because I'm probably not going to be playing high level now for the next, I'll be finished in about a year or 2, I should imagine. So I'll be going to step into the umpiring then. So, okay, thank you.
That's right.
Okay, we're over time, so I think we need to wrap this up. Any other burning questions before we finish? No. Okay. So thanks for attending, and just as a reminder, if you've got any questions that are remaining or want to discuss anything further, just get in touch with me. I am your conduit through to people like Ray and Mark and other people on the committee. So just get in touch with me.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.